So it's going to be a busy day on Capitol Hill today as lawmakers work to finish negotiating a COVID-19 stimulus package to help Americans in need and avoid a government shutdown. CBS News Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cordes has been covering the stimulus talks. She is with us now to explain what's in the new bill and what we can expect. Thank you so much. This is the news that many Americans have been waiting for. Yes, the vaccine is big news, but many Americans have been wondering whether or not they're going to get any help from the federal government. Where do negotiations stand right now? Because it looks like for the first time we're hearing something positive.
Right. I mean, we're hearing from all of the congressional leaders that they are incredibly close to cementing this deal once and for all on a $900 billion or so relief package and releasing the text. And time is really of the essence here, Anne Marie, because what they want to do is attach this relief bill to a government funding bill that has to pass by tomorrow if they want to keep the lights on in the federal government. So, we're really looking hour by hour at their progress here. They need to release the bill so that lawmakers can at least take a cursory glance at it before they pass it in the House and then in the Senate and then head home for the holidays. So broad outlines of what we're expecting in this massive package: stimulus checks of $600 or $700 for most Americans. Federal unemployment benefits restored, about $300 a week for 4 months, plus food assistance, rental assistance, an extension of the eviction moratorium, an extension of student loan forbearance, money for vaccine distribution and testing and tracing. The list sort of goes on and on after months of so many Americans waiting and watching and wondering whether Congress was going to do anything to help people as the unemployment rate remained high, as very worrying signals in the economy persisted. Now they have the answer. Congress is finally being spurred to action.
So these negotiations have dragged on for months, and really up until recently, it seemed like there was, a gap the size of the Grand Canyon in between the two sides in terms of what they wanted to see. I'm glad that that gap is closed, but I want to point out that the New York Times is reporting that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is in favor of the stimulus checks because he believes in part that it may help Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue in Georgia. They're both running for re-election. Is politics playing a role here in the sudden acceleration of the negotiating process?
Politics plays a role in everything on Capitol Hill, and this is no exception. Certainly, there is a belief among Republicans that a stimulus bill right now will help those two Republican senators in Georgia, but there's also a feeling among a lot of Republican senators that they don't want to spend too much money. So those two factions, those two beliefs have kind of been at war for a while. It's part of the reason that it has taken so long to get to this point. There was disagreement within the Republican Party itself, and then, of course, disagreement between Republicans and Democrats over how big this bill should be. The reason that they ended up landing on $900 billion or so is because it gives Democrats the chance to say, look, we have secured about almost $1 trillion in federal assistance, while Republicans can argue that because about $450 billion or so is going to be covered by unused funds from the CARES Act, which was passed earlier this year, that at the end of the day, they're only spending about $500 billion, which, guess what, is the amount of money that Leader McConnell wanted to spend for months and has been arguing in favor of. So both sides are going to claim a win here as they head out the door for the holidays.
That's interesting. So you touched a little bit on my next question, which was going to be about concessions. And, one of the areas where there was a big disagreement was the amount of money spent, but also, other things like whether or not protections, legal protections for businesses moving forward when it comes to, what they should be obligated to do to protect their employees, whether that should be included, and a few other things. So can you talk about other areas where concessions were made?
Sure. I mean, those are the two biggies, right? State and local funding, which was a red line for Democrats, liability protection, which was a red line for Republicans. Turns out those were dotted red lines because they have both been stripped from the package. And in fact, the fact that Democrats did let go of funding for state and local governments, which, by the way, they still argue is incredibly important. I mean, state and local governments are struggling all around the country, facing very difficult decisions about whether to lay off frontline workers because of budget shortfalls related to COVID-19. So this is going to continue to be a source of tension and discussion within Congress. But once Democrats let go of that, that left congressional leaders with about $160 billion that they could play with. And that's how we ended up seeing stimulus checks end up back into the deal after being told for months that really there wasn't enough money to make another round of stimulus checks happen. There's not enough money to make another full round of stimulus checks happen. The $1,200 that we saw back in the spring, there's about half that. So that's why, even though we haven't seen the final numbers, we're anticipating that it's going to be about a $600, $700 check for most American workers. Just depends on where they draw the income cutoff. If they make the cutoff higher, then that means the people who do get the checks get less. If they make the income cutoff lower, then the people who do receive those checks get more. Sorry to bring so much math into it this early in the morning.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting a headache, but it's okay. It's all good stuff. Listen, before we let you go, I want to talk about President-elect Biden's inauguration. The planning, it's in the works. But like everything else during the era of the pandemic, it's going to look a little bit different. What can you tell us?
Right. So we're all familiar with that iconic image of presidents for time immemorial being sworn in on the west front of the Capitol, 12:01 p.m. on January 20th, and they're always surrounded by family, by dignitaries, by lawmakers. There in the West Front, there's actually room normally on the West Front of the Capitol for about 1,600 people to witness the inauguration at close range. That's obviously going to change this time around because for pure social distancing reasons, you're going to want to have far fewer people there on the West Front. And so the plan is to both limit the number of tickets dramatically that lawmakers get to give out as sort of prized chits to supporters, donors, friends, family members, and the like. Normally, the inaugural committee hands out about 200,000 tickets. This time, each lawmaker only gets one guest, a spouse or significant other, someone like that. And they're not all going to be able to be seated on the West Front. Some of them will be down on the National Mall below, kind of looking up at the president-elect. We could see a wide swath of the National Mall blocked off entirely so that well-wishers don't feel the incentive to come down and witness the inaugural themselves. They're being encouraged to watch it on TV. You're going to see a lot more pre-produced elements of the inauguration. All of this aimed at reducing the chances that anyone contracts coronavirus as a result of this inauguration. I think it's pretty unlikely you're going to see anything like an inaugural ball taking place, and the parade that typically happens takes place from the Capitol to the White House. That is going to be reimagined as well, we're told, so probably a much smaller footprint for that.
All right, Nancy Cordes, thank you.
You're welcome.